Rejected media is probably my favorite or one of my favorite things I do on this channel. T, you are back. It has been a long time.
It's good to be back, baby. Yeah, it feels like home.
Come up with a lot of nicknames for you in the meantime, but since I have to keep this video sponsorship friendly, I'm gonna keep them to myself and maybe we'll reveal them in like a little DLC content drop over the years.
So. I like it. I'm sure they're very complimentary nicknames. I'm very excited
absolutely all very nice. And speaking of very nice, we actually were looking at cut content for the Arkham games, things that were considered, things that were dropped. One thing that we came across that was very interesting was an interview with Sefton Hill from Rocksteady back when he was with the company that was about the Batmobile. The Batmobile is a point of contention for probably, I don't even know the percentage of the fan base, but like a huge amount of the fans when it comes to Arkham Knight. And you know this better than anybody.
Oh, yeah. There is a lot of contention around that juicy Batmobile. And listen, things that were great, but it was kind of forced down our throats. I think everyone agrees on that.
Yeah, it was quite a bit. And originally, it almost could have possibly showed up in Arkham Asylum as a playable feature. So, things might have gone very differently if that were to have happened. We're going to take a look at that today. But before we hop further into it, if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, check out the other rejected media on the playlist. And I want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, INTOTHEAM. INTOTHEAM is a clothing brand and a website where they produce quality clothes crafted with care. Now you're gonna see me here modeling, doing a fantastic job, if I do say so myself, wearing some of their graphic tees. I absolutely love these. They are very, very soft, very comfortable, and honestly, they fit me very well. I'm a bit of a bigger guy, okay? I'm a very tall guy. I certainly like food a little too much, and these tees fit me very, very well. The art is awesome. I especially love the more female designs, especially like this female robot that my wife picked out, and I also love the astronaut imagery. It's very awesome. It's very retro future, and I love it. You can get 3 graphic tees for $61.95, basic tees 3 for $52.95, and there is also a link in my description to get 10% off on these premium made tees. They're running a bundle deal for their graphic tees, my favorite, which is 3 for $60, and I think this is a very good competitive price. You go to the store and you go to buy t-shirts, they're very expensive and you're not really going to be getting this quality. I love these, so click the link below and you will get an additional 10% off. Thank you again to INTOTHEAM. I hope to work with you again in the future. I love your clothes that you sent me. They're actually really comfortable. Let's hop back into the video. All the way back in the year of our Lord 2009, Gama Sutra, or Gama Sutra, however you want to pronounce it, I feel like that was racist, actually did a little interview with Sefton Hill, and he was talking about the mechanics they went into, what they were thinking when they tackled certain elements of Batman Arkham Asylum. You have to remember, this was back before Arkham was a huge franchise, and the question came up about the Batmobile.
Yeah, and they asked the question, for Batman Arkham Asylum, how hard was it to resist the temptation of throwing in Batmobile driving segments? Kind of talked about how he thought it was interesting what you guys did with the Batmobile, but that they weren't really used. Obviously, you couldn't play in them in the game itself. So Sefton Hill went on to say, we didn't have a flying or driving section in the game. That's true. There's a lot of discussion about that. Obviously the vehicles are a part of Batman. We decided that we would make vehicles a part of the story, so rescuing the Batmobile plays a significant part and the Batwing delivers the line launcher. What we don't want to do is take on too much. Some of the things that we really wanted to achieve were for Batman himself, so we didn't want to overstretch with the driving section with its own mechanic and requirements and take that development time away from the things that were important for Batman himself. That was what really drove the decision. We had a lot of discussions about it, but at the end of the day, anything that is going to compromise the quality of what we were doing was something that we wouldn't take on if it was going to compromise the quality of the other components. We wanted to make sure that what we deliver and what you play is at the highest possible quality.
I'm actually happy with that, by the way. So basically, I think it's worth noting that the Batmobile could have been in the game.
It was like considered.
It seems like it was almost in the game, as in they were talking about it and the question was, okay, well, these vehicles, like he said, they're synonymous with Batman. When you think of Batman, what do you think of? You think of gadgetry, you think of detective work, you think of his vehicles, you think of his resources a lot of times, and what he makes out of them. I mean, this is a very MacGyver-like character. Like, if you give him $1 billion, he can make a weaponized tank. If you give him 5 paper clips, a chewed-up stick of gum, and some string, I'm sure you can make something out of that too. The guy's a genius.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, like, when you think about him, that's something that's going to come up in development. I thought this was very interesting because they did actually heavily consider this. They were talking about this during development, talking about what they wanted to take on. It's also worth noting we're going to show a couple of pictures of the Batmobile during this. They're pretty much the same picture. I'm just going to show it more than once. Yeah. But there was initially a different design for the Batmobile as well during the concept art stages of this, which I think is pretty cool.
It's very cool. And there's a lot of different... It's weird, like the windshield's red, and there's some more... It almost reminded me of Spawn, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a very retro future-y look.
Yes.
Like, and
beyond, but like old, you know?
Yeah, it's very weird. But it's cool looking.
It is.
It's also very similar to what we got with the way the body is built and stuff like that, too.
For sure.
It's just the details are all different.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
I do think it's important here to note that with Arkham Knight, whether it is your favorite or least favorite in the series, this was still a question. Once it released, a question was still, what was sacrificed to put this much Batmobile in the game? Remember this?
Absolutely.
Like, it was a big question from the fandom of, okay, well, we didn't get Prometheus. You know, that was a character that had been teased 500 times and never showed up. And there's even some, I would say, evidence we're going to look at in the future about him supposedly going to show up in the Season of Infamy, things like that. You know, that world with Arkham Knight, it really got added onto with Season of Infamy, with some of those DLCs. So you look at it at the base game when it came out, and a lot of it was heavily reliant on Batmobile mechanics. So a lot of people were saying, okay, well, what did you sacrifice? Like, we got rid of the Riddler Jigsaw-like murder rooms for Riddler race courses, for example. And so a lot of people were like, I don't really like what had to be changed to fit those mechanics in the game. Now think about such a smaller scale game with Arkham Asylum. How would that have been done? How would it have played over with fans? And would the series have been as tightly knit in its first 2 titles if they had tried to introduce this concept immediately?
Well, and I think that's the point. Part of the thing too, that why they did what they did, is that you look at Arkham Knight, and that map, to your point, there's probably some sacrifices that were made there, but that entire world was kind of designed to be navigated by the Batmobile.
Yes.
Like, it's very designed. Everything that you run into explodes. There's the interactions where you're trying to blow up some of the robot cars, basically, around that you're trying to get. You're obviously interrogating some of the thugs around there. A lot of the on the ground gameplay is centered around being in the Batmobile.
Even the remote. They remember the remote, how you'd have certain sections where maybe you'd be Batman, you need to go on the remote and use the Batmobile to then progress as Batman.
Yes.
So it was in or out of the Batmobile, it was working.
Right, or adding like the tow thing, you had to use the pressure to open up some doors when you connect like a tow cable to it and back up and use the
remote power winch.
The thrusters, yeah.
You must use the remote power winch.
Yeah. Or then you look at Asylum, and that game was so, as you mentioned, it was very tight, but part of the charm was running around the asylum because of the things that were going on the ground. As the game changed, you had poison ivy taking over, and so you had to dodge those plants, however annoying those things were with their heat-seeking bulbs that were going after you. That was an added part of it. You had
They called something on me the heat-seeking bulb in college.
They
like,
did,
you can't talk about that too much here.
You had a real reputation, yeah.
Absolutely.
And then there was the lunatics. Once they got released, they became part of it. There were snipers all over the place. So, like, a car just doesn't really fit in that vibe for the kind of vibe and environment that they were trying to make in Asylum that works very well, and you're in the Asylum. A lot of the charm is in the buildings themselves as well. So
this is probably the most internal, I don't know how you'd say it, this is the game probably most focused in the entire franchise on the time you spend indoors.
Yes.
And in small areas.
Right.
I actually think it really excels at that. I think a whole video concept that probably hasn't come out by now, but it's something I'm taking a look at, is just the almost atmospheric horror and the claustrophobia of the game.
Yes.
Where you're stuck in a hallway, or you're stuck in a small vent, or you have to get from this building into this building, but the elevator's out type thing.
Or even when you're going to, like, if you go and visit the Joker in the visitor center and those 5 different interactions that you can have throughout the game, it puts you in a first person, it puts you in a very tight corridor, and you're in there, and it's creepy because everything, the music changes, the whole place changes. and then he's there, and it's you and the Joker right there.
I genuinely think this game does the best of making you feel like Batman, a man. You know, a man who's outgunned and outmatched. And
IGN taking
your
his
wits. Sorry about that. Too much water, 0 out of 10. There was too much water around the island, 0 out of 10.
Unbelievable.
It's very contained. So then how do you introduce a Batmobile section? Or even, I would say even more, the Batwing. I mean, like the Batmobile, I could have seen them adding in a Lego Batman-esque level where maybe you have to drive. You had an idea about that too.
Yeah, well, potentially is if the only thing that I saw that would make sense as far as the scale, because just navigating the island itself, there's so many doors, like everything is very constricted to where you'd get in your car and you drive for 3 seconds and already beat the next door that you'd have to go through and get security clearance through. It makes no sense. But if you were taking like the Batwing, for example, or if you took the Batmobile off the island, if the map was big enough, and you had to say, go find the bombs that Joker had put in, that had put around the city to kind of keep people distracted in Gotham itself while he's taking over Arkham Island. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing that would make kind of sense to me is you have to leave the island briefly, which also kind of bizarre when there's basically Joker's taking over with everyone from Blackgate, Bane, Scarecrow, Killer Croc, everyone there is just kind of running loose. He leaves the island. That also doesn't make a ton of sense. But say that that's what you did. That would be something where using the Batwing or the Batmobile would maybe have some justification.
But then you have to ask, would you want to design entire gameplay mechanics around that?
And just one mission, essentially. Yeah, it'd be like one time you leave, come back, and you probably wouldn't use it again.
That's why I think it was smart that they did this, because they pointed out, I mean, I know, again, this is PR speak, which Sefton Hill was amazing at.
Yes.
Very good at interviews. He was very good at spinning things, always to make them sound the best they are. I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying he was very good at his job.
And he knew his stuff, too.
Yes.
He knew the content.
And so that's why I think it's interesting with what he said, is that we didn't, we wanted to make sure that what we deliver and what you play is of the highest possible quality. Essentially that they were trying to not compromise on other things to make just a vehicle.
Yeah.
So I think this was very smart overall. I just don't think it really would have worked. I think it took until Arkham Knight. Even with City, with how small City is, it's big, much bigger than, Asylum. But with how small that is, I think driving around the car, you would have already it feels less claustrophobic. You feel more like you have access to more resources, more weapons, stuff like that. The more stuff you give Batman, the less of a threat it feels like everything around him is.
Yeah.
And that was already an issue for a lot of players with Knight. And Knight was a huge world designed for the Batmobile. It had threats designed for the Batmobile, and that was still a concern.
There was, and there were moments, to your point, like they did some really cool things with the Batmobile. Like there were some awesome things. The way that it drives and the way that you move around the city in it, I really enjoyed.
Yes.
But there were also elements of like, I felt like it was GTA at points where there was like a horde of thugs. I just hit the boost and smoke them all with my car, and like that's a little bit weird from a Batman perspective. Is that I'm basically trying to run these guys over with my car.
Oh, but you shocked them and they flew away and they're fine, and it was an electromagnetic field, and but now imagine trying to make those things work in this.
Yes,
that's my point. Is like you already have players dissatisfied with that.
Right.
I think it's fun. And I think despite memeing on it, it was always fun.
For sure.
But you did have to make changes to make it happen. So now try and do that with your first Batman game ever and see how that goes over.
With much different technology too, by the way. In 2009, this is
also
way different.
Look at all the games, the superhero games that didn't really get a bunch of sequels. Batman Arkham could have ended up like that. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people don't think so now, but it was very possible when Arkham came out, with how experimental it was trying to be with some of the free flow stuff, with some of the psychological horror elements, all this stuff. It was very possible that it was just going to be a hidden gem. It was going to be like Batman Vengeance, where it was just kind of it is what it is. Here you go. You're not really getting Batman Vengeance 2. Maybe you'll get Rise of Sun Tzu or whatever, or Sun Tzu, and that's its own thing. But this is the game.
But kind of like an indie classic almost in Batman lore, if you will.
And that could have really easily happened if they started messing with the core fundamentals and DNA of what we got. I mean, imagine they did this and they screwed it up. All of a sudden, the rest of the series might not exist.
Yeah, well, and then you even look at like, as far as the impact too of like, if you have the Batwing, why wouldn't the Batwing be involved in kind of helping to take out some of these threats too? And why not have the Batmobile be involved? You know what I mean? I guess to some respect, like Joker is on the top of the intensive treatment building or whatever it is, and he's all tightened up. Why wouldn't we have the Batwing trying to take him out with
You'd have to redesign a lot.
You'd have to change a lot of stuff around the game, and like they said, the quality would have been impacted. So I think it was the right call, and I think most people agree, like, it doesn't make sense to have a Batmobile or Batwing in a game like this.
And honestly, I hope at some point, this is a small aside, I hope at some point we get an R game like this. I think this game is very unique in the Arkham franchise in terms of being such a small experience and being so focused. And I think the goal with superhero games has become so lofty of like bigger world, more stuff to do, more of this. I love the focused, narrative and world of this game. And I think that adding the Batmobile would have compromised that focus.
I agree. You look at games like we were just talking about today, Marvel's Spider-Man, for example. Massive game, really fun game, but it's such a different experience than what something like this is too. So it's nice to have those different experiences, I guess, is maybe your point.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm happy we got what we got.
Me too.
So if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. We're going to be doing more rejected media. Some of it will be Arkham, some of it will be different stuff. If you haven't already seen it, we did do a video about the rejected Lego Batman movie sequel. I also did one about the rewrites that would have completely changed 007 Quantum of Solace. So there are a lot of fun cut content / rejected media videos on this channel that I hope you will check out. I have also started another channel if you're interested in role-playing games at all. I do JayRPG, that is in the description down below. I also have Degenerate Plays, where we play through games together, so lots of fun stuff. And thank you again to our sponsor, INTOTHEAM, for sending me some awesome merch, some awesome clothes. Hope you guys will check them out too. Have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.